Welcome to the Prime Property Finance Podcast with Gareth Morgan and Mark Watts. This unique podcast will dive deep into all areas of property investing finance, going behind the scenes with property professionals, investors and clients. Between us, we have 35 plus years experience in property finance. The podcast has been launched to share knowledge, mindset requirements and experiences of successful investors and professionals. We aim to simplify many of the complicated areas of finance and investing and provide valuable and easy to implement tips. Keep an eye out for our new longer episodes every Tuesday and our shorter ones every Friday.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Prime Property Finance Podcast. My name is Mark, and in today's episode we're going to explore no money down deals and what that actually means. So if you are an investor who hasn't got an abundance of cash, then this may well be the episode for you. So let's get straight into it then. No money down deals sounds like the holy grail of transactions and, in certain circumstances are extremely useful. So we just want to explore some of the strategies that are available for individuals who perhaps don't have that abundance of cash, as I say, to be able just to invest into property and so on. So we're at that time of year now where people have no doubt revised their strategies and goals for 2026. Property may well be one of those objectives, or certainly trying to grow portfolios, enhance what you're already doing, all of those good things. And money and the absence of cash may well be a limiting factor. So it needn't be. We can explore why that is actually the case. So kicking off with this then, we're not going to be doing a deep dive into each of the individual strategies. This is a short episode, so we're literally just going to run through the high level scenarios that these strategies may well be used at. This is not an exhaustive list. I'm sure there are other strategies that require little to no money in the first instance. So we'll just run through them in order, really, of what we hear a lot of, and then perhaps some things you may not have come across to date. So in reality, is there such a thing as a no money down deal? It depends what you define as no money down. In most instances, there is a requirement for some sort of money. It may not be £30,000-40,000 worth of funds. It could be a couple of £100 to pay for solicitor, documents, those sorts of things. So defining no money down deal, for the purposes of this conversation, we want to be clear that there will be some requirement for cash, but that is not where we're talking about the tens of thousands of pounds. Maybe a few £100 to get some legal documents put together and those sorts of things as well. So we're talking no to little money in regards to what we're talking about today. Okay. So kicking this off, then we've got something called rent to rent. So if you've not heard of this before, rent to rent is simply where you rent the property from an existing owner and then you subsequently let it to somebody else. So you act as an intermediary, if you like, in that transaction. So an example where you may do this is you've got a house, a 2-up, 2-down house in a location. The owner is either no longer wants to live there or is going to rent it out, etc. You agree to rent it off that individual for, let's say, £500. You have identified that actually you can run this as a serviced accommodation, short-term let, holiday let, and you can rent this out for much more money. Now, you are not necessarily taking on the cost of any of that. Your commitment is for the rental income, and then you would rent it out for a profit. And your profit is the margin between the rent, obviously, and what you can generate in terms of the holiday let. Very little money required from the outset. You may need to spend a little bit on the property to get it up to standard for a holiday let or things along that line. But, if you're clever or if you're resourceful, that spend can be limited, especially if you're going to do the work. This is more of so you're in control of the property as opposed to owning it. Okay, so you don't always have to own the property to make money. That's key. So you can then, it's about your time, your expertise, getting it occupied and so on and so forth. So that's the margin. So rent to rent is growing in popularity. We certainly hear more and more of rent to rent, and we actually see them a lot in portfolios when we ask to see people's property schedules. It's not just to holiday let. You can take a property from where it is and let it out as a HMO. You might just be able to let it out for a greater sum for its current use. So these are the sorts of things. So what you're looking to do is identify a property that is you can rent for one price and you can subsequently sweat the asset, as it were, so that it can work harder and do something different, and then you benefit from the difference between what you rent it for and what you rent it out for. Okay, so that's rent to rent. Your cost in that as well would also be the legal documentation that you need to have that drawn up. That wouldn't be a standard AST or occupational contract. That is going to be a bespoke legal document that you're going to need to put in place. So there we go, rent to rent. Next on the list, we've got lease purchase options. Now, these are the next step up then, if you like, from rent to rent. I've tried to do these in some sort of order. So these are the next step up from rent to rent. This is where you agree to rent the property, okay? And you may repurpose that property to do something else with it. So for example, again, running a HMO, I'm going to run it, I'm going to pay this level of rent, and I'm going to operate the property as this, and it's going to generate my income or my profit. However, in this instance, you've also got the option to purchase the property. Okay, so let's say you've got a 5-year lease in place with an option to purchase the property within those 5 years. And it is an option, not an obligation. You can then choose to buy that at a later date. Now, you may well be able to negotiate within this so that you can offset the rental as deposit and various different mechanisms to do that. As I say, we'll do a deeper dive into this at a later date. But very often you'll agree the purchase price you will agree the purchase price at the very outset. So I'll rent this off you for the next 5 years for X pounds. I will agree to buy it off you for £100,000 based on today's market. Now, invariably, over 5 years, you would expect there to be some sort of uplift in the value of the property. Also, because you have the ability to buy it, you may want to do some works to the property whilst you're now under control and sort of thing, and do the uplift in value. So when you come to exercise your option, the property is now worth 200,000. You've agreed 100,000 purchase. There's equity in it, and you can potentially leverage some of that as well. Okay, so that's the lease purchase option. Again, your cost will probably be legal costs. You may need to pay some sort of arrangement fee, etc., with the vendor. These things can be negotiated, but your solicitors are primarily the cost that you're going to encounter on that one. So then we have something called exchange with delayed completion. We're starting to get up the scale of a bit more sophisticated in regards to this. So when you exchange contracts on a purchase, that is a legally binding contract on both parties to complete the transaction. There's a penalty if you don't do that. That will be written into the contract. So you exchange your contracts. However, you don't complete straight away. You can complete whenever you want, in theory, as long as the vendor and you agree what this looks like. So what you may be able to do, for example, is exchange, fix whatever problem you need to fix because you now contractually are going to buy it. So that gives you the ability to go in with a degree of comfort that you can do X, Y, and Z to the property. It may need a full refurb. There may be a challenge over the title. It could be a short-dated lease. Many things that could encourage this type of strategy. What you would then do, you would go in and fix it, and then that would subsequently make it mortgageable, and you can do whatever you want in that regard. You may uplift the value as a direct result of that, which means you can now leverage the increased value. Right, so there are a number of things you can do on that. So an exchange with a delayed completion is something we see quite frequently. And as I say, it works really, really well in certain circumstances where you want control of the property. You know you're going to buy it, but you need to do X, Y, and Z in order to fix whatever problem is going to be there. And then you complete with the property then intact or whatever it needs to be off the back of that. Okay, so that's exchange with delayed completion. Then we've got something called vendor finance. Now, this is ultimately where the seller or the vendor acts as the mortgage provider. So what you may do, for example, is if a person isn't in a rush for having their cash, you may be able to agree with the seller that you're going to buy it, let's say, for 100,000. What you then do is to say, right, well, actually, Mr. Seller or Mrs. Seller, I don't have the money to do that now. So we'll exchange and complete today. Okay. And what I will do in place is I will give you a first charge over the property. So you've effectively loaned me the money. Okay. So you become the mortgage provider. I will then pay you an interest, let's say, for the privilege. And again, this will all come down to negotiations. Enables you to do X, Y, and Z to the property, maybe to run it. They aren't in a rush for cash. They can have the income. You own that property. Now, you generally, in this instance, do actually own it, but they have security. So if you default on your arrangement, they can then recover the property back, and that's their security. And that then enables you to be in control of the property. So, for example, let's take HMOs, okay? Let's take a 10-bed HMO, for example. You're a first-time landlord. Now, if you went to go get a mortgage on that, you may struggle because not all lenders will lend to first-time landlords. you may be limited in your deposit that you can actually generate to 25% requirement. What you could do is exchange with you could exchange and complete so that you own it. The vendor would be the loan provider and you would pay them their interest. You'd run that property for, let's say, 12 months. The income that you generate then could contribute towards your deposit that you want in order to raise a mortgage, okay, on the back of it. That you could own that for 12 months plus, so that you then get past the ownership of 12 months. You can then get a mortgage, as I say, up to 75%. You've got the residual income that has come off the property that can contribute towards that. And you can see then how you can build a pot. That means that you can pay back the vendor their 100,000. You've got a property. You didn't initially have the cash in order to buy it in the first place, and you've now got a mortgage and you own it, and the vendor has had their money. So again, probably the thing you'll need most is legals. So you'll need to have your solicitors on board for this. You may want to pay for their solicitor costs and so on. So it's not entirely no money down. It's just a very limited amount of money is required to get you into this type of deal. Okay, so using vendor finance, and I've seen this a lot, in fact, in certainly more complicated transactions where the asset is more niche, more unique. I think the seller is usually more experienced when they've got that type of property, that type of asset. And this has worked particularly well where people have been able to do X, Y, and Z with the property, then get it suitable for mortgage and move on. Okay, so that is vendor finance. And then the last one we've got is simply other people's money. So if you are somebody who is credible, credibility is key to this, or you know somebody who has some surplus funds, we all know that interest rates in banks aren't phenomenal, and it might just be sitting around there in liquid cash, and they don't want to go into property, but they want to earn a bit more on their cash. Then using other people's money is a great tool to get you into property in the first instance. Now, it comes with a very large health warning because it is other people's money and things can go wrong, as we all know, in property. And my advice in any of these situations would be always to treat it as a business transaction. So this could be, friends or family that are offering to lend you the money. The temptation there is to do it on a handshake. I would always encourage somebody to go get legal documents drawn up in regards to this. What does it look like if you can't repay it? What is the interest you're going to pay? What if something goes wrong with the property and all of those sorts of things? What you don't want is that money coming in between what was a good relationship, i.e. friendship or family for that matter. So other people's money is a great tool, can pour fuel on the fire really where it comes to actually buying property or growing your portfolio. Even if you've got an existing portfolio, other people's money can really, as I say, add some accelerant to that as well. So it means that you can effectively act as a cash buyer. You can work with bridge lenders. You can't really work with mortgage lenders unless you structure in a particular way. We can help with that. But invariably, the property that you're going to want to try to buy is inevitably going to be something that you need to do something to, hence the short-term nature of what you're borrowing. But yeah, that is a very, very good tool in which you can move yourself through property. So you can go from a standing start, 0 properties, to a reasonable portfolio in a very short space of time if you've got the access to the cash. And that might be, as I say, other people's cash. So there we go. As I say, I didn't want to go into too much detail on each of the strategies. We'll cover these off in future episodes. But I just wanted to share that if you are planning to get into property or accelerate your progress within property during 2026, the absence of cash doesn't need to be a complete showstopper. You just need to start to think a little more creative around how you're going to do these things. And as I say, there are some well-trodden paths. So find yourself a good property lawyer, a good property solicitor. They will be able to help you. This sort of stuff they would have seen in the past. And then it's ultimately about finding the deals. In all of these things, you need a willing seller. If you haven't got a willing seller, then there is no deal to be done. All of these are just theoretical. So yeah, keep looking for the deals. Know there's an arsenal of opportunities there that you can call upon, not just have I got my 25% deposit, etc. And happy hunting. So good luck with that. If you've got any questions at all, feel free to drop us a line. You know how to contact us. Our details are going to be in the show notes as well. And if any of those ideas have sparked any interest, then please do get in touch. Happy to share that with you. And we will look to do future episodes, as I say, on these going forward. So thanks very much for listening, guys. Hope you find that useful. And I will see you on the next episode. Cheers. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We hope you have learned something and have some tips to take away. We'd be very grateful if you enjoyed the show. You could give us a review and share with anyone that you know that may be interested, and of course subscribe to the show so you can get notified when a new episode is released. If you'd like us to answer any questions or go deeper on a specific topic, please drop us a message at primeproperty.finance. See you on the next episode.